Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I have a very interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Vosteed Raccoon with the top liner lock, or essentially Vosteed's version of the Spyderco compression lock, which the patent ended on, so companies like Vosteed can use now legally. And that's great because it's a wonderful locking system. I will link this knife down in the description. It may or may not be in stock because, you know, the people who really want it have bought it aggressively. But hold out if it's not there, because it's definitely worth it, and there are definitely more coming. Thanks to Vosteed for sending this in. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at _metal_complex. So, I am probably known across the internet as being the snobby, obnoxious, sometimes aggressive knife guy. Metal Complex, right? If you've never heard of my channel, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I venture to guess you've heard my name or seen my name on Reddit, usually with someone complaining that all I ever show are expensive knives, etc. They're partially right. There's a lot of that stuff here. But the reason I'm telling you this is because I want to remind everybody that one of my greatest joys doing what I do, which is review pocket knives, like, you know, a lot, about 4,300 uploads, a lot over the last 6.5 years. I handle a lot of stuff. And one of my greatest joys, I realized I didn't finish that sentence. One of my greatest joys is finding a knife that costs less than $100, in this case less than $75, that is truly spectacular. These knives are, essentially affordable to the vast majority of people. It really accentuates the meaning of tool, the meaning of convenience, value, all of that stuff. And I know that some people might have a hard time believing that somebody like me could find that much joy in something like this. Believe it or not, yeah, it's true. This is spectacular. This is, you know, sort of the golden, just imagine the golden sparkling light shining down upon this. The other exciting thing here is the implication of what is yet to come for Vosteed and other companies doing their own compression lock. The age of everybody doing the crossbar lock or the axis lock is coming to an end. I'm sure it'll still be here for a bit, but it's coming to an end, and the new age, right? The doors are opening for the age of the compression lock, and I'm very excited. This is a great example of the potential of it. So I'm gonna review this. I'm gonna give you guys my thoughts, right? But if you just came here to see if I said knife good, well, knife good, knife very good, you should buy. But it might be kind of tricky because it's understandably going to be in and out of stock. Let's go ahead and measure this thing. Overall length of the Vosteed Raccoon is coming in at 7.5 inches, blade length 3.25, cutting edge about 2.9 inches. How about some size comparisons? Any custom scales you find in this section can be found down in the description under Original Goat and others. Up against the AD10 and the AD20.5. This is the Raccoon. Most of you are probably familiar with the Raccoon. This version of it is not different than the other versions in terms of the dimensions, right? Measurements, things like that. But we're still going to do it anyway, very close to the size of the AD20.5. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Very close to the size of the Para 3. And then finally up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case the Ritter Hogue and the Hogue Deca. How's the action? So, with the crossbar lock version of it being the best prior to this, there's another thing. It's not just manipulation of the lock. And by the way, when we say compression lock, what is so special about the compression lock? Just to take a pause here for a bit. Different than a standard liner lock, which heavily relies on geometry with the liner sort of slipping in underneath the blade, right? So when force is applied on the spine, which is rare and not really proper use of a knife, but it does happen sometimes during normal use, when force is applied here, it stresses this in kind of an unsafe way. Where a compression lock engages is behind the tang, right? So when force is applied either, on the blade or the spine, the way that it locks up is substantially more reliable. And Spyderco has proven this over a very, very long time. Not an indestructible locking system, right, to stop cold steel tri-lock fans in their track. Just imagine a machine gun, like a crank machine gun, but it throws pies, right? As you were putting your finger in the air, getting ready to open your mouth and tell everyone about the magic cold steel triad lock, educate us, right, rather, about the cold steel triad lock and how durable it is. Just imagine getting hit in the face with 1,000 pies, all within about 30 seconds. We know. I'm sorry. No, I'm imagining it. It's really funny. But this is a very, very strong locking system and is, for the most part, overkill for general EDC. But the fact that we can get it in such an inexpensive package is very good. The reason it is better in terms of deployment, right? Manipulation, I think it's a little bit subjective, but in terms of the feeling of deployment, I think unanimously, if you got 100 people picking this thing up and deploying it, it would be almost unanimous that this feels more crisp. And the reason is because a crossbar lock is acting as the detent, sort of as the tension, additional tension is created or released, right, as this sort of rounds over the tang. This has a detent ball, like a liner lock or a frame lock. So you get that crisp snap, which is really great. It's also better than a standard plunge lock. This is not a plunge lock, right? Regular button locks, the lock is the actual cylinder of the button sliding into an area underneath the tang that is carved out to receive a cylindrical locking system. This tends to be mushy or crunchy and is not nearly as satisfying traditionally as something like this with a detent ball. This compression lock just happens to be operated via a button, which has its pros and cons. But the point I'm making here is that the action is very good, right? If you fast forwarded through all of that, you're like, I know this Metal Complex guy likes to talk. He loves to hear himself talk. Basically what I said was lock good, make feel good, finger know how to operate, right? It feels great. It's excellent. It's exactly what you would want it to be. So that's awesome. Pushing the button releases the blade, and it, wow, just flies down into the, look at this. That's crazy, man. Oh boy. Really, really easy, very natural to manipulate. Whether you've experienced a compression lock or a button operated compression lock or not, pretty much anybody can pick this thing up and deploy it, and it'll function exactly the way that they would expect it to. Carry profile, thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3, it's a little thinner, which is great. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. This is an easy object to carry. It's compact. It's not super tall. It's made out of materials that allow it to be fairly lightweight. It's just not going to be a cumbersome object. Let's go ahead and weigh it. I'll get that zeroed out. So the weight of this guy, I honestly don't know if it's different than the standard one, but it's almost what I consider to be ultra lightweight. Anything under 3 ounces on this channel is considered ultra lightweight, and any additional amount of weight below that I consider to be trivial because I'm not going to notice it. But at 3.1 ounces, not only is that lightweight, but the ratios are fantastic considering you have a nearly 3-inch blade anyway. The weight on this guy, or I'm sorry, the balance on this guy is literally right behind the pivot. So it is about as close to perfect as you can get if you put a lot of stock in the way that I do those measurements. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use in this channel. So there's another advantage to this one over the crossbar lock version. You don't have to mess with the crossbar lock or omega springs while you disassemble and clean and reassemble your knife, which a lot of people will say you don't even need to do that. People who do that are wasting their time and blah. I think it's circumstantial, right? For the most part, they're right. You're not really going to have to completely disassemble your omega spring crossbar lock version of this knife, but for the people who do, and believe me, there are people who do, they will make themselves known in the comments, it's not the easiest thing in the world. I mean, it can be a little bit frustrating even for people who've done it a million times, especially for people who've done it 0 times. This is nowhere near as complicated. It's a compression lock. So you just take it apart and then put it back together. I mean, it's simple. It's like a 5-piece puzzle. Let me think about this. Blade, 2 scales, that's 3, 2 liners. Yeah, and some hardware. I guess if you count the individual fasteners as pieces of the puzzle. But it's incredibly simple. I mean, insanely simple. So that is another advantage that this has over the crossbar lock version. You have those are T6. Gah! I'm just kidding. It's not that big of a deal. Vosteed, toss the T6 screws and make them T8. You'll make everybody happy. But as long as you have the right tools, as long as you have good quality bits, you should be good to go. Everything else, pocket clip screws, the filler tab screws are all T6. No big deal. Let's go ahead and measure the blade stock thickness, which I would venture to guess is the same as the standard button lock version and the crossbar lock version. We're looking at 115 thousandths or so. So yeah, materials is all still the same. They're using 14C28N, which is arguably the best, or one of the very best compositions you can get on a knife at this price point. We have, I believe this is black micarta. They come in a few different colors of micarta or G10 or whatever. And I think that Vosteed, I think you need to dramatically expand on this, right? Carbon fiber, many colors of this. Is your bug out, man. This is your pyrite, right? I'm trying to think. This is your Spyderco PM2 from my perspective, right? This is a huge winner. You have nested steel liners, which is great. It kind of, in this case, is helping out the balance. It helps add an additional sense of, I guess, rigidity, durability. It's more of an artificial sense, I guess, because either way, it would still be plenty strong for what you would normally do with it. But it just feels very well made. So adding this button-operated compression lock is really taking it to the next. I mean, the value is really off the charts here in terms of what it's able to do efficiently as a pocket knife, not just in terms of the blade steel, the blade geometry, but how easy it is to manipulate, how natural it is to manipulate when it comes to that locking system. It really is spectacular. I would love to see some different, lots of different colors of G10, micarta, various carbon fibers, right? I think this is the type of knife that people would love in some nicer steels like S35VN, M390, right? Whatever you're able to do with it. This is one of those knives where it just sort of works. I mean, the pyrite is a great example of a knife that people accepted in basic, materials like steel frame or G10 and AR RPM 9. And they also accepted it in titanium, carbon fiber, and S90V, right? It just works. I think this would work too. I just cannot believe how well they nailed this down. I mean, the thing has no blade play whatsoever and is absolutely substantially more resilient to stupid things like what I just did there. I just want to make everybody aware, if you're new to my channel, I think the spine whack test is insanely stupid, and there's a lot of content creators out there who will go and absolutely swing their knives as hard as possible against a hard surface and then go, this is proof that the locking system isn't going to hold up to normal use. No, that's not normal use. That's not. What are you doing? Like, what is the job that you hope to complete? Right? I mean, what is this an example of? It's nothing. It's meaningless, right? Now, I normally do a little bit of a light triple tap, and the reason that I do that, the reason I do it at all, is because while normally the force that you are applying on the blade is on the cutting edge because it is a knife, right? Normally, sometimes there are circumstances where you might be cutting into something that is thick and dense, right? It's thick styrofoam or some similar material, thick piece of rubber, whatever. And if the blade gets stuck, you try to wrench it back out. I have been in this exact situation before with a liner lock. I believe it was either a liner lock or regular button lock, plunge lock. And that pressure, that movement, that pressure on the spine, right, actually overcame the strength of the lock, and it caused the knife to disengage. Now, fortunately, nothing bad happened as a result of it, but the worst case scenario, you cut yourself really bad, right? And then that something like that happens, you lose trust in it. So while I do completely and totally believe that the spine whack test is a stupid test, I think a little bit of light tapping or pressure is worth applying just to make sure that that lock can withstand it, right? but grabbing it and swinging it as hard as you can into a concrete surface or something, I don't think that really proves anything. It certainly serves as an incredible marketing tactic for the cold steel triad lock, right? But what that lock is meant to withstand is far beyond anything that any normal person would ever do with a pocket knife. As much as I love cold steel knives and the triad lock, truthfully. But boy, this review's really getting away from me. I am a huge fan of the combination of elements here. And it's really cool that Vosteed has, I mean, truthfully, they have one of the best pocket clips in existence. This is like about as perfect as it gets, nested into the scale, and then the screws are recessed into the pocket clip itself. The pocket clip goes down, slight swoop, slight bill, so it's basically perfect. In and out of the pocket, one hand, nothing to slow it down. It's really, really great. And the cherry on top is that you can mount it on the other side, so left-handed people can enjoy this essentially the same way as a right-handed person, except that you are manipulating the lock with your index finger. There's a pro and a con to this. The pro, it's like all button locks in my opinion. I think it's actually more natural feeling to operate this with your index finger. Brown Knives apparently thought this too, because he flipped his button-operated liner lock around for right-handed people to manipulate with their index finger, and I think that's really cool. We don't see that very often. But yeah, I think it's actually a little bit more natural feeling to manipulate it as a left-handed person with the index finger. Now, the downside to this is because this is a button-operated compression lock and not a spine or tab-operated compression lock. When you are left-handed and you are in the standard hammer grip, you're fine. There's nothing on top of the button. When you're choking up on it, you got a little bit of your hand on top of the button. It takes quite a bit of travel in order to push that lock completely out of the way of the locking face of the blade. So, can you disengage that lock by squeezing? If you squeeze hard enough, I think you can. Truthfully, I can't get it to go. I have to like really try and angle my hand just right, and I gotta squeeze it like this. This is a weird angle to be holding on to the knife. Grabbing it up here and squeezing in the choked up position, a lot of the force is going into like this zone here with a slight bit of force on top of the button, but not enough, I don't think, to disengage it unless you're really hammering down. However, I wouldn't risk it. So as a left-handed person, you gotta be real cognizant. If you're gonna carry this knife, got to be real cognizant of where that pressure in your hand is going, right? Try to do your best to keep your finger off of this. As a right-handed person, there's really not much of an area where you're going to be landing on top of that button, even choked up, right? So you should be good to go. I do think it would be cool to eventually create a version that is, I mean, why not? Make a version that's almost identical to the Spyderco version, right? People are going to yell, copy, copy. Yeah, but listen, here's a Hogue crossbar lock. Here's a Pyrotech crossbar lock. And then do we have the Benchmade? Yeah, here's the original Benchmade Axis lock. All versions of these crossbar locks are essentially identical. And while you did have the goofballs in the beginning after the patent ended going, copy, 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 we don't understand how patents work, that eventually people were like, ah, well, whatever. So we might as well get past it and just make a version that's identical to the Spyderco version, and then that way right and left-handed people don't risk disengagement with pressure because the thing that disengages the lock is not on a scale face, it's back here. So it'd be cool, right? I mean, there's pros and cons to manipulation either way, but that might be something to consider. Really, any little thing that I can complain about is just a minor nitpick, and it's not going to apply to everybody. This is really, really fantastic. And it's cool, right? I mean, it's made, well, it's Vosteed, right? These are made in China, but it's good China, where, I mean, the quality is very, very high versus the bad China, which would be like what you would get at the gas station, where it's just kind of slapped together and painted rainbow or black with flaming skulls or something. This is, on the more intentionally utilitarian side, where they're making things that are super high quality and purpose built. So the combination of elements here, really the end result is an absolutely spectacular EDC knife. And there's very little to complain about. I mean, they probably could have moved the pocket clip up a little bit, but that's subjective, whether or not that's even better. The total amount of hardware holding this thing together is super duper minimal, so that's another huge plus, right? The lockup, like I said, is totally solid. There's a little bit of shouldering back here, which is great. No blade play up, down, left, or right. No stick, no pivot lash, incredibly smooth. Does run on bearings, I think that's obvious. The detent is an actual detent because it's got that, I wonder if we can we see it? Is it actually, well, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it is riding on a little detent ball in there. But anyways, really great. And then I've been playing with this thing, so it might be slightly off center because of me, but it looks pretty darn close anyway. The price on this thing is $5 more than the crossbar lock version. I don't know why, but it is, and honestly, who cares? This is an excellent budget knife. Budget on this channel means anything under $75, and this is definitely under $75. Excuse me. This is legitimately one of the best budget knives ever in existence, and I say that with complete and total confidence. If you are new to pocket knives and you're like, I just want to know where to start, you got a lot of choices. But if you choose this, in my opinion, you chose one of the very best that you possibly could. If you're not new to pocket knives and you're just looking for your next budget knife, your next beater knife, or whatever, yeah, this is it. If you own the button lock version of the Raccoon and you own the crossbar lock version of the Raccoon and you're wondering, should I buy this one? Is it worth it? Yeah, it definitely is. This is very, very good. Potentially, like at the end of the year when I do the best of the best, this is potentially the greatest budget knife of 2024. Obviously, I have a lot to weigh it against, and there's a lot of stuff that's yet to release, so we'll see. But this is definitely up there. This is definitely one of the best total packages, dollar for dollar, that I have reviewed in 2024, and I've reviewed a lot of knives. So buy with confidence. I'll link it down below. Like I said, it may or may not be available, but it's definitely worth checking. That's going to be pretty much it. This is going to go in my Cheap Knives I Like playlist and my Most Recommended Knives playlist because it definitely deserves to be in both. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex and on TikTok at the_metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.